Welcome, Harambe radio and television family, to Live in the Spirit, Metaphysical Monday with me, Brother Wali. And yes, most of you who have tuned in to the conference bridge, welcome. Those still tuning in by our internet radio, www.haramberadio.com. This is what we do, bringing the best out of us to get the best out of you. So all I ask you to do is tell family, tell friends, tell those that you love as well to tune in and join us. Tonight on this beautiful October 17th, 2016, it's 10 p.m. straight up on the East Coast. How you doing out west? 7 p.m. Chi-Town in the Midwest, 9 p.m. Welcome. We have over 150 cities and 30-plus countries. We've been doing this 13 years strong. So we welcome you listeners to tune in, strap up, get ready, because we're going to be discussing the metaphysics of Nate Parker's movie, The Birth of a Nation. A few acknowledgments before I move into that section of the show. Well, my spirited co-hosts will join me. Just wanted to let the family know, thank you very much for all that you've been doing as we've been keeping strong what we do here on this side. My grandson Elijah again, who's going to be in a tournament upcoming soon through Berean Baptist Church. I want to thank the support of the family with that. I want to thank him for being a very aggressive young man, going on 12 years old, to stay focused on what he's doing, because it goes on past basketball. I'm making sure I teach him that, to not just keep the basketball mindset, but understand who you are through our ancestry, and that's part of what I do to help him grow in his consciousness, something I think many of us have forgot to give back to the youth so they can blaze a trail. Now, family, as we are in mid-October, in what we call the fourth quarter, and the horror days are going to be increasing, shows like this and others, we advise you at any show on Harambe, just keep tuning in, because we want to keep you with the pulse of what's going on in the world as we know it. So we'll keep you informed of all the things that's going around with our station, changes, upgrades, guests, and information that's much needed as we're trying to further the black liberation that's definitely needed within our community. But tonight is a very special night. Again, as I say, we're going to be breaking down the birth of a nation. I will not be doing this alone. There's a very good brother that, for over, the 10 years I've known him, is a good brother in the spirit that I met. As a matter of fact, about 10 years ago. This brother, and I know he always tells me when I bring it up, he is the reason I am part of Harambe. Met this brother as he was traversing through Stone Mountain, and we found out we had a lot in common. One of them, radio. I was able to be a guest on his show, and a month later, in January of 2017, which will actually be my 10th year, I now have my show. This brother is a giant, a legend in more ways than one. The brother has a wealth of knowledge, athletically, professionally, understanding yourself, the legal system, and a host of other things that he will help me with tonight in breaking down the metaphysics of a birth of a nation. I do hear the beeps, and I do believe my brother had came on. So joining me on the airwaves for this part of the show is my big brother, Hamza, Sid Catlet Bay. Welcome back to Harambe, brother. Are you there?
I certainly am, brother. I certainly am. Boy, 10 years, man. You getting old, man.
I know, man. And thank you for helping me get old with this station, brother. And again, I told him you're a giant in more ways than one. And, Chat Room 786 is a staple of Harambe and what you do in the legal system. Let the family know a little bit about what you do before I bring our other guests on as well.
Well, thank you, Brother Wali. I tell you, I thank you so much for a lot of things, primarily for being who you are and for being the committed brother in the community who he himself is proficient and efficient in a broad range of subjects and a broad range of endeavors. And I think your biggest accomplishment, if I could say it, is how you relate to your family, brother, how you relate to your kids and your nephews, your uncles, and all those things that make up a family. You do it, and you do it so well. And so, I'm a believer that the chess pieces are moved by the chess mover. We like to think we're the chess movers. We like to think we're the ones moving the chess pieces. But in truth, the creator of all things is the master of the chessboard, and he moves those pieces according to his will. And so our meeting each other was a destiny that was going to be fulfilled one way or another. And so I'm so thankful that we've had this opportunity over the years to connect, and that you're still hanging tough with Harambe. And I tell you, I think the only person who got us beat in age is Delani, but that's okay. But I know he's about to go that daggone Hamza, but we love him so much. Words will not even bear witness to the brother's worth in our mind. So I thank you so much. We're on Harambe every Friday, first 2 Fridays of every month at 9 p.m. where we deal with primarily 2 set of subjects. One centered around the legal system and how to address the legal system, how to protect oneself, how to participate, how to access the legal system. And the other thing we focus on is sovereignty. We hear, and I'm certain you have heard, there's a lot of discussion in the community about sovereignty and being sovereign and all those things, and we thought it was necessary to go beyond the label and to discuss what it means to be sovereign, how to exercise sovereignty, given that we have been indoctrinated to behave as debtors. And a sovereign is not a debtor. He's independent. He or she is independent. And so the behavior aspect of sovereignty we thought was important. So we deal with that. We bring in a very special guest, Consul Lamont Durrell Belton comes in, who's out of the Richmond, Virginia area. He comes in and talks about sovereignty and aboriginal rights and things of that nature. So I'm gratified always to have this opportunity to be with you and to address it, particularly this particular subject and this movie that depicted the life of Nat Turner, a brother that we very rarely, if ever, hear about. And so thank you for inviting me. I look forward to the evening, and I stand prepared to participate wherever I can.
Oh, thank you, brother. And the accolades toward you is more than deserving because of all you've done, not only with Harambe, but in the community, with the youth and sports as well. Joining us tonight as well, my brother, another good brother that I've met a little less than 10 years ago, but the brother has always been part of the Harambe family and the community. A person who has a depth of knowledge on several subjects as well. Very humble brother, very athletic brother, but a brother that will ask you to research and delve into topics that you do not understand. This brother has even elevated to the level of being one of our producers here at Harambe, assisting us with programming, even assisting in improving on the phones and how we could learn to mute out lines, and helping Brother Delani, our CEO and founder, to correct that in certain areas. The brother even recommended that I recontact you because you and I hadn't been on the air together in several months. And, when you and I don't connect, we know it's a spiritual thing, and we will reconnect like tonight again. So coming to the air as well in roles that pertain to this subject is a good brother that keeps it real, keeps it raw, keeps it humble, but keeps it family. Our good brother as well, Brother Dub Duce, the poet. Hotep, my brother, welcome to Harambe again.
How's it going, good brothers? Thank you for having me on. It's been not too long because we filled in for you about a month or two ago, Brother Wallace. So I'm grateful for all. again, big shout out to Brother Delani for providing this platform for so many years and being the fighter and the warrior that he is. So I'm thankful, brother, and let's get to it. But let me do a quick production correction real quick, Brother Wallace. You hold for a second. Take some of this out. Okay, I believe that took it out. So go forward, good brother, and we'll take it from there.
Again, thank you, Brother Dub Duce and Brother Hamza. One disclaimer, and the only one I will make for tonight's show, and I appreciate you, Brother Dub, letting it be known that I want to let the family know this. The information we will be giving you tonight is based on the three of us watching the film. We will be laying out some information that many of you who have seen the film, we're not aware of, and many of you who will see the film, not that we're playing spoiler, we think it's important to know. But this is coming from our spirits and what we've researched in ourselves and cinematography to give back to you. So it's not based on any fact that may pertain to your own opinion, but it's based on what we think is important to be able to decipher, especially with a great warrior as Nat Turner. His family has already made certain claims that the information that has been shown in the movie and otherwise is not complete to his narrative. So we just want to stay on message to what we think is important as we see fit. And in saying that, opening up with what I believe is the first important part is the title, Birth of a Nation. Many people who I've talked to, my good brothers, were not aware that the Birth of a Nation was originally a titled film from 1915 by D.W. Griffith. This was a silent movie that was involved showing the race relations between we, the African ascendants, because I know descending represents being under, we are the African lineage that was here in America, as well as with the Moors, and again, Brother Hamza could speak to that, but it showed criminalizing us in America. It showed also the birth of the Klan and cross burnings, and it was used to intimidate us across America. If you think about what's going on in 1915, family, several hundred hangings from the turn of the century on through the 40s, and get the book Without Sanctuary if you need to research the lynchings of us. This was done systemically. So it's interesting to me that Nate Parker's film, The Birth of a Nation, had that title because I think in his own way he was calling out to us to say, when are we going to develop a nation to be able to handle the business of what's going on with us in a murderous way? And Nate Parker, to me, did a great job in depicting what an African would do, in essence, being trapped under the guise of slavery and having no choice but to fight back, even at the beginning when he was told by his father he was a leader. And there are several tenets we're going to go through, but I just wanted to make sure people understood as I open it up to you, Brother Hamza. The Birth of a Nation, so people who may have heard that before, was the title of the silent movie, and they were talking to their people about us. I do believe Nate Parker was using The Birth of a Nation to ask us through his film, it's time for us to birth a nation, at least to get organization to be able to prepare for the impending drama, crimes, and outright debauchery that's been done to us for centuries.
Well said, Wally. And let me first also say my expressions of appreciation for Brother Dub Duce. Brother Dub is a steadfast brother, very talented in a broad range of areas, and it's always good to share the airways with him. Some poignant things I think that are relevant and interesting, especially for us. And when I say us, I mean the three voices you're hearing this evening. 1915 why would that be significant for the three brothers you're hearing? Well, we just happen to be in a city, in an area in Georgia. Although we're not from Georgia, we happen to find ourselves here in an area, of course, called Stone Mountain, Georgia. And in 1915, also was the reemergence of the Ku Klux Klan. And in Stone Mountain, Georgia, in 1915, after the Klan had been submerged, the Klan reemerged in Stone Mountain. And Stone Mountain became the focal point in the 20th century for the secret society that was dedicated to white supremacy in the United States. The Klan would meet on the top of Stone Mountain. They would burn the cross at the top of Stone Mountain in hopes of, again, what Brother Wali expressed, which was to intimidate those who could see the top of the mountain from the surrounding areas. It would intimidate the brothers and sisters in the general geographic area of Stone Mountain. So I find it interesting that here we are in Stone Mountain, in the area where the Klan reemerged in 1915, at the same time that this film, Birth of a Nation, came and made its debut in America. So, as a matter of fact, I know, Wali, you can probably go on the top of your house and look, and you can see the mountain from your house. And
most definitely.
Right. So anyway, also what I wanted to say some things that were not a part of the motion picture that I think the listening audience should know. The name Nat Turner. Turner essentially is an anglicized version of the native Aboriginal name Turnica, Turnica. Turnica had been corrupted and anglicized to Turner. And the Turnica tribal entity hailed in Louisiana. And as a matter of fact, in addition to that, the Turners were a family bloodline that was associated with the Empress of the Washita. The Empress of the Washita's name was Veridice Goston Turner L. Bay. So her bloodline lineage was associated with Nat Turner. Now for me, that's profound, because I've had the honor and the privilege to be the ambassador for the Washita Empire, Washita Nation, and as a matter of fact was able to represent as a delegate on the delegation in Geneva, Switzerland, to represent the Washita at the United Nations annual Indigenous Peoples Conference in 2004. Had a very intimate and still have a very intimate relationship with the Empress's son, Joe Washington, and just want to mention that bloodline that's highlighted, the Turner bloodline highlighted in the movie, has a direct association from a bloodline standpoint with the Washita. And so that's another point, of course, that was not mentioned in the movie, and that's understandable, but it's a part. For those of you who want to acquire some additional information from a source material that you can acquire online for free, write this down so you can go ahead and go for it. Just go online and type in the Return of the Ancient Ones. Return of the Ancient Ones, the true history uncovered of the Washita. You don't have to worry about spelling out this word. It's Dedugdamaunya, which simply means we dug the mounds. Yeah, okay? The Washita Dedugdamania Empire, and the book was written by Empress Berenice Washington Turner L. Bay. And so this book is available online for free, and she chronicles her bloodline relationship to Nat Turner, and as well as his bloodline relationship to Henry Turner, who was the individual who won the landmark Supreme Court case, United States versus Henry Turner and his heirs, where he won back 63,000+ acres of Louisiana land that was improperly sold by way of the Louisiana Purchase. And he won that case and won that land back. Of course, the state of Louisiana has not responded appropriately to that ruling, but that's the history. And you'll be able to find some more details about the Turners in that book. Again, for those of you who want to acquire it, it's called The Return of the Ancient Ones. And just generally speaking, for those of you who may be wondering who the Washita are, just let me just simply quickly say that the Washita have been deemed by the United Nations, as well as the Smithsonian Institute, as the oldest indigenous people on the planet, on this side of the hemisphere. Not over in the East, not in Africa, not in so-called Egypt, not in the Middle East, so to speak, but over here. The oldest indigenous people on this planet resided in the Louisiana area in the so-called United States of America. All right? So I commend the brother for putting that out, for going through all that I'm certain he had to go through to get that motion picture made under the banner and under the atmosphere of a rape allegation and that type of thing, which I'm certain, Wally, you're going to go into. But that would be my general opening comments about this movie, to provide some historical backdrop to the movie that, of course, was not expressed in the storyline, but nonetheless is a part of Nat Turner and what Nat Turner represented.
Well, thank you, my brother, because that is definitely a good setup, because I know that the historical aspects of language, land, family, and I know a few years ago when you had put something out about our good sister Veradici, that was important for people to at least know it has a base, not just a movie, it has a base, and some of the missing pieces that I spoke of, as we try to connect the dots to them, people can at least do their own research to be able to discuss other things than just a movie. Now, one of the opening things is I want you to lay truth to your research on this, Brother Dub, is when he was being talked to as a young child by his father. It's a very poignant scene when he was discussing with young Nat Turner who he was in wisdom and strength. It's something that we talk about when the ancestors, the griots, would have conversations around the campfire to remind the youth how the village is going to grow. Even here, after captivity, the behaviors that came from Africa here was very important not to lose. And if anybody didn't pick that up, those are some of the things we want to uncover as we progress, discussing the details of how Nat Turner was developed in mind and in spirit. Brother Dub, if you could shed light on the discussion between son and father, and in this case father and son, that help grasp, in my case anyway, the audience attention to know there's a bigger picture than just a conversation. It leads to him becoming who he was throughout the film.
No, Brother Wallace, to hit on that real quick, the language that was being spoken where the father was basically saying to young Nat, he's a prophet, he's special. He was telling him and his mother that as they sat around in a, what we would call, I guess, for lack of a better term, an ancient African traditional cipher, fires burning, chanting's going on, bodies and faced or painted in a certain fashion, which was at the beginning and at the end of the movie. But the language that was being spoken was the Ashanti Ghanaian language, which is called Twi. And Twi, like I said, is history lies in Ghana. So even though I know we talked about, Brother Hamza talked about the oldest people on the planet being traced back to the Washitals or the Tunica tribe, that it also still has that correlation to the historical continent known as Africa. Because again, when we talk in ancient times, we're not talking about how the globe is mapped out today. We're talking more so in a Pangea kind of theory, where it was all one landmass. But in going back to the name in itself, when you look at Nat Turner's name, and when you break that down, not even Nathaniel, just Nat and Turner, from a numerology standpoint, the numbers that you come up are master numbers. Because when you look at Nat, you're looking at the number 8. And when you look at the last name Turner, you're looking at the number 33. So, and then when you look at where the name Turner comes from, when you talk about the Moorish tribes, you talk about the name Tunica, or Turnica. So you, whether with the R or without the R. So then you're also looking at the master number 22. So within his name, there's at least 2 master numbers that he's dealing with. That's part of his destiny, because his destiny number was 3. When he was born on October 2nd, 1800, you're looking at the number 3, and you take the number that he when the date that he died or was killed was November 11th, 1831. So there you're looking at the number 8. So remember, he's dealing with the number 8 twice, in the beginning and at the end of his life. 8 is the number for more so for as above, so below. What's happening in the universe is also happening here on Earth. So that's why he deals with it at the beginning and at the end. All of this was just part of his destiny. But there's several things in that movie that took you back to the ancient times, to his ancient existence, because you're taking again, you're looking at the name, you're looking at the ritual, you're looking at when he met Cherry, which eventually became his wife, and they both had to get separated. He gave her an Ashanti mask. Again, the Ashanti tribe being out of Ghana. So again, Africa, or the ancient Pangean Africa, is all throughout this movie. Again, and we're only dealing with the cinematography standpoint of what was shown in the movie, not necessarily. We're not matching history and accuracy. We're just dealing with what's in the movie. But Nat Turner, there's several key points in the movie. Well, the first point that I recognized was when the master of the house or of the land learned that young Nat could read, then they requested him to come and to live in the house. One of the things symbolically that was present that I don't know if many people picked on was in the backdrop was a baby goat. A baby goat in certain, let's say, societies that we know of in the Western Hemisphere is when certain parts of rituals is when you ride a baby goat. And that goat is simply just an animal that simply, most part, climbs a hill or mountain. That simply means that you must go higher to seek the mysteries that's due to you. And that's what was shown first when he was a young Nat. But when he was an older Nat, an adult goat also appeared. So the baby goat again represented by such riding of the baby goat was when Nat was younger. But at the same time, the baby goat reappeared as an adult. And in most cases, as we know, goat is meaning the great architect of the universe. Then when you look at goat in reverse, you're also looking at the ark of God. So, Nat was destined for revolutionary greatness, whether we know it or not. But then again, that was addressed in the movie by his father. And also, you have to remember, in the Western society or Western astrology, the goat is a representation of Capricorn. When you in this duality, it represented the fall of Nat as an adult. Nat also represented the sun. Sun represents consciousness. So in the fall of Nat Turner, as an adult, the goat is more representing of that. Even though it represents him having to go higher into his consciousness to get where he needs to get, it also represents his fall, his consciousness as well. So that's what I take from it right now, Brother Wallace, but continue on.
Hey, brother, that's a good date, history, and time recognition. As a matter of fact, I would be remiss if I didn't say on October 2nd, it was a day in history, because that's the day, metaphysically and in physicality, that I met my wife in 1982, of course. But the movie itself opened on October 7th. If you go back and remember the opening, so they did that 5 days after Nat Turner's Earthrealm Day, even though it was 200 plus years later. He was born in 1800. This movie came out in 2016, so we're at 216 years after his Earth Day. So I'm looking at the numerology. When you add 2, 1, and 6, we come up with 9, and we can get into that numerology. But it's key to the speaking and the gift that he had to read. It kind of opens up the door that giving you a Bible to read, and most people who study anything about the history of the European here, was not to allow his captured African to read, because it would be a threat. He would know his laws, know his charters. But the Bible, they allowed Nat to read, because when he was reading other books, there was a pivotal scene where she said, "Don't worry about those books. They're not important to you," meaning you're too wise as it is. We need you to keep people in line. And as the movie progressed and I was watching it, it was already in my spirit knowing, because of my study, that the first thing they gave our people was the Bible to learn how to read. As a matter of fact, there was a whipping post if you did not submit to Christianity that they would whip you on until you claimed your submission to Christianity and Jesus Christ. And you can go look at the whipping post and see them doing this. So, when we go back to you, Brother Hamza, because the segues are matching up, as Nat progressed in age and they showed him reading and they showed him traveling throughout the South to be able to read to other brethren and sisterin to keep this word going, they was looking at him as an entertainer, using the word, somewhat like they do today, to keep people docile and in line and not paying attention of what's being done to them. I'd like your perspective on that, brother, because I know just because it's that part that, drew me to say, wait a minute, where is he going to take this? I kind of seen where he was going with it, but in progression, I was like, wow, he's breaking something down. And as we get into what eventually happened to him, the knowledge of his reading to stay on one path seems to be a key element what they do with us as a people today. You can go here, you can study this, but dare you not speak out of turn, because we have something for you on the other side if you do. Keep that word going, keep the hope going, but the realities never speak about Obama. So we'll just keep you clouded in mystery, and that's kind of my take on it. What say you, my good brother Hamza?
Well, a similar perception, Brother Wale, which is the slave master had to have some mechanism by which control was instituted amongst the slaves. The Willie Lynch letter is another example. But he was afforded to be able to read the Bible and to equate particular aspects of the Bible to the life existence of the slave. Essentially, the idea was to afford the slave to internalize a perception of itself regarding slavery, that slavery really was something that had been ordained by God. It is similar to the so-called manifest destiny concept of the Catholic Church, which centered around the idea that the Catholic Church had been ordained by God to bring Christianity to those who didn't have it. And it was part of their destiny to do so. What we need to fully understand is that when those endeavors were exercised, you needed to have someone who was charismatic, someone who was a good speaker, someone who could articulate in an express way and be listened to by those in the community, on the plantation, in hopes of making certain they understood that there were definitely consequences to not adhering to the word of the book, and that any repercussion that would come about as a result of anyone's transgression was also a result, a consequence that was ordained by God. And so if you did not act accordingly, the lashings that you received were part of what was a consequence of your rebellion against the word. And so he was used for that purpose. And of course, as time went on in the movie, when he started getting exposure, because by traveling outside of the plantation that he was on, by traveling, he got a clear perception of how others were being treated throughout the land. And so at each instance where he was able to absorb just how low the treatment was, his presentation of the word became more and more powerful, more and more emotional. And then ultimately, of course, it ended with a rebellion. So I will say that that part is consistent with today. We have many, and many of them are notable preachers who understand the real deal, who know the real deal, but because they have been afforded to be a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization, being able to benefit from the tithes that are given and be able to prosper, will not tell the people the truth about the issue. So this is relevant today, just as relevant today as it was back during that time, without a doubt.
Exactly, and I saw it was building up. You know, he was using the word, and when he would go to each slave master's camp, and different slave masters, especially the real redneck, vicious, devil-like ones that he went to, and they said, "Who's this nigger here?" And his own slave master had to try to address them and put them in check. And the guy had a vicious dog that he was basically saying, "I can put my dog on you. I really don't like you either. You're a white man, and I think you uppity." So basically, he took them to the shed in the back where our people were, and they was in fear. And I believe, you know, Nat, as Nate Parker played the character, and if you think about it, Nate Parker, Nate. Look how even the names are so similar. Like you said, taking the E off, and, you know, we could say how in conjecture, Nat Parker, Nat Turner, Nate Parker, Nat Turner. But when he went back there and he was speaking to them, he could see how they were looking at him as it's the beginning of theology school. This is how you keep them in check. Excite them. And you could see it pained him in his face that he was reading words out of a book, and he almost wanted to stop, because as he was reading, you could see his spirit be torn between connecting with them in somewhat of a cipher, but there was another alien force there where he couldn't talk to his brothers the way he wanted to. And the word, because it wasn't about tithes at that time, he thought that he was being exalted to do this to help his people, till he realized, I have a gift and it's ordained from God. until he spoke about helping a white man. And he used words in the Bible to say that it's his commitment to see that this man is baptized. Well, as the movie progressed and he did that, they surely would give him hell behind that. And he had a battle with another person who thought he could match him of wit when he started quoting back Bible verses to justify what he would do to uplift somebody who was already in pain, another white man. So, of course, it goes back to, nigga, you out of your place. You don't do that because we didn't bring you here for that. This isn't the truth. You need to tell him. We'll give him that. So as you progress, and again, it brought my wheels to turning about the birth of a nation, change up what you were taught to do the right thing that's beneficial for somebody else to ingest, no matter who they are, if you truly are in spirit. However, it took him being beaten to almost his own death to realize, I got to make a change. And I wanted you, Dub, even though I know the religious part is where we all have consciousness on, to see how maybe even his recording of what happened not only to him, but prior to that when they assaulted his wife for walking through an area like they do now, walking while black, driving while black, show me your papers in the beginning of the movie with his father when they said, where are your papers, nigga? And he had to know that he was stealing some food. They were going to harm him. But then his wife, who was out of a certain area, they assaulted her. Do you see the correlation with anything with today, Brother Dub, how the traveling of a person in an area supposedly for your own betterment with papers they could use against you because they are now making up the laws as they go?
Well, let me go back first and build on what you guys were talking about with the with the religious standpoint of it. One, sure. I look at when Nat was traveling and preaching the so-called word or the so-called gospel, that was the indoctrination of the black codes, the black church codes, where, you have the black preacher, the black reverend up before the black audience or congregation. Then you have the white overseer or two, where they do all the collection and they give you the verses that you can speak on and the verses that you cannot. So that was the indoctrination of the church black codes in the movie. Also, look at when Nat baptized the white guy being with, I believe it was E.T. Brantley, who was a slave owner at one time. Then supposedly, as the story goes, that he denounced his slave ownership and wanted to be a Methodist. And if you know anything about church-wise or religion-wise, Methodist is the middle acronym for AME, African Methodist Episcopal. So Nat Turner traveled and saw the truth. He kept seeing the truth of what was going on. He already knew the truth from where he was, but from the way he was treated compared to the way others were treated, I guess he in the movie wise, he may have looked at that as being, man, I think I got it bad, but they really got it bad. So that was one thing, and again, dealing with the religious standpoint, because you got to remember, in the religious standpoint, and I don't know if Nate Parker did this intentionally, but if you recall, when you watch this movie, they never mentioned the name of Jesus. They always said Lord. That was key in that movie, particularly for anybody paying attention, and particularly for any Christian paying attention. If you're still in that Christianity doctrine, that Lord as a noun is simply someone or something having power, authority, or influence, or a master or a ruler. But as a verb, is the act in a superior or demeaning manner towards someone. So, in the movie, they never mentioned the name of Jesus. They always said, Lord. Lord. Again, Lord doesn't necessarily mean Most High. Lord doesn't necessarily mean what you think of God or creation. It could mean God, but little g, but not God, big G. So, but to go back to your original question, when Nat's wife, Cherry, was at the well, and again, her, as beautiful as she was, remember when Nat first saw her, she was all beat up, probably had been raped a few times, and she looked, she looked horrible. But he, in her horrific state, he saw the beauty in her. And he even stated that to Samuel at that time, Samuel who was his childhood friend who grew up to be his master, again, in the movie. So he saw her beauty. But when she was at the well, that really told you who she was or who she was the daughter of. She was the daughter of Oshun. She was at the well of the running water. Again, the well water either comes from the river or the lake, or in this connection underground. And her beauty exemplifies Oshun. So, yes, in today's society, that's still the case, whether it was the black woman or the black man. Yes, the split quote unquote slave master, whether physically or mentally, needs that black woman in his entity, in his business entity, to run it, because she births all things. No one else can birth an idea or a strategy like a black woman. So she is much needed, even though he may have to rape her and rob her of all that she knows, her senses, her culture, her family. He needs her to birth his idea. Again, we're talking about birth of a nation. The original, like you said, in 1915, the nation is what they were attempting to birth, again, which I believe the original name of birth of a nation back then was the Klansmen, talking about the KKK. But if I may, real quick, Brother Wallace, if we got time, there were two very significant things in that movie, and I'm going to do my best to take my time to explain it. One of them, well, let's go back to when you talk about the whipping. Remember in the movie when Nat he was debating with the Right Reverend, and the Samuel hit him in the mouth with the butt of the shotgun, and they whipped him and they put him on this this cross, this crucifix. Then at the end of that scene, you saw the other slaves lighting candles around him, around that area. What that was, the lighting of candles after Nat's whipping, simply symbolized the ushering or the rise of a spirit and energy. Because, you see, it rose him from the cross of like, let's say, the cross of death, which is the Christian cross. It rose him from that to the virtuous man, which is Merkaba. Mer meaning light, Kaba meaning spirit, Ba meaning body or soul. A vehicle of ascension into a visible or invisible world. Remember, that's why he kept dreaming. The original story of the rebellion started with him dreaming of blood on the cotton. So that's why you kept seeing him dreaming, because he was in Merkaba. He was in that light, that spirit, that soul he was traveling through. And then the second thing, again, just bear me a little time, was when Nana, who I think the character's name is Bridget, passed away. Meaning that happened. People watched the movie, probably missed it altogether. When after Nana got beat with the whip, Nana stitched him up, laid the white cloth on him and everything, and days later, or the next scene, Nat gets up, he's talking to Nana, but he didn't realize that Nana had transitioned. So once he realized Nana had transitioned, Nat first performed Reiki on her, in particular her feet. Reiki is simply channeling energy and healing. The next step that he did, he mummified her. Again, bringing it all the way back to the African concept. He mummified her. This was done because Nana was a high priest of the village. She was a high priest. Remember, the feet is where the kingdom and the souls lie. Her death was brought about because Nat was assaulted by Samuel, by hitting him with the butt of the gun. And remember, and I'm paraphrasing here, she said, I'm glad that your grandfather is not here to witness a strong black man of God stand up to his master, only to be broken. That because you got to remember, as a high priest, she represents the moon. The moon casts no light of its own. It's simply receptive and reflected. The light received from the sun, i.e. Nat, because he was broken, was death. So she took the death from Nat, and she received it. Remember, the sun symbol is consciousness, and the moon represents subconscious. So subconsciously, she took what Nat had. And in their Kabbalistic period of life, remember, Nat's Reiki wasn't to heal her, but it's simply to channel the injury into a Sephora, or i.e. Malku, the kingdom. Again, thus the sun and the moon had to unite in order for her and him to reach their kingdom. And that was the first sign that he got. But people may have missed that. The second sign was the sun and the moon united in the eclipse. So remember, in Reiki, you're doing what's basically called magic. Black magic, white magic. Black magic, is best, white magic, let's say, it's best done when the moon is full. A full moon is the most impressible. It will receive most of the light from the sun because it has no light to give. Black magic is when it's best done when the moon is new or black, most like Saturn, because then you're banishing things away from you. You're banishing all the negativity of what's going on around you, when the moon is black. So those are some key elements in that moon. Probably, to me, the most powerful elements, like I said, when Nana transitions, because that's when he transitions. That's when he rises. That's when he transmutes into the higher consciousness of those massive numbers when we talked about with his name, 22 or 33. He transitions in that because, remember, all throughout the movie, candles are being lit. Candles are all around them. And if you remember in the breakdown that we did of The Dark Knight Rises, in the beginning of the movie, when Bane and them hijacked the plane and they were getting ready to leave, and one of their guys said, he was strapping up to leave too, and Bane said, "No, brother, they expect one of us in the wreckage." And the guy asked Bane, he said, "Did we start a fire?" And Bane said, "Yes, fire rises." And fire is simply the element of knowledge. Go ahead, brother.
Hey, brother, you really took it and brought it into a more clear sphere, because a lot of people who may have missed that who will see it again, and I recommend those who didn't see it or those who saw it and just watched the movie, watch it again. It's worth it to possibly see some of the coding we're talking about, which leads me to this question, because, as I put my own mental notes, because this isn't just something you can gloss over. I have too much respect for the genre to just have an opinion and just let it go. I want to make clear, concise points to maybe get my brothers, as iron sharpens iron, to relate to. As he received the knowledge, especially after Nana transitioned, and he realized what he had to do. Realize, R-E-A-L-E-Y-E-S, as Professor Kamal would say. When he realized what he had to do, he had a smile over his face as he read the Bible to his brethren when he explained to them, this is also a book of war. When he was reading that we must now get organized, he was showing organization. And we're talking about from a cinematography point of view, but in relation to me thinking about today, he didn't just go out and say, I'm going to slay a dragon with an axe, which he could have done in his own, master's house. What he did was start to organize with the same people he was preaching to, and as you were seeing one of his boys throughout the movie, he was automatically down. Then the young brother, the younger buck, who he told him, hey, he's cool. He could be with us, because he was very concerned, was he ready for this type of preparation for battle? As he was gathering in his troops, and you seen more brothers come, they knew they only had but so many weapons to be able to fight back. But he said it would surely be our death if we don't. As they was whipping him, and you could see the smile on his face, he had become numb to the whipping. It's almost like, if you let me live through this. This is what I was channeling in him being whipped. You ain't killing me, you making me stronger. The same type of scene they did in Glory with Denzel Washington when they whipped him, and he just took it. And it seems to me, we as African ascendants, we have taken so much pain, we've been able to block it out, to be able to push forward and move ahead, regardless of how much, except for bullets. And we're not bulletproof like Luke Cage, but I digress. We have taken so much in to where pain becomes secondary to purpose. And his purpose was to know that if I don't correct this, they've beaten my wife, shut her eyes, they've beaten me for preaching their word. We have to kill them. There's no other choice, because we surely will die, because anything we do will kill us, especially after the other brother's wife was taken into the house to be taken advantage of. So all these systemic things that happened, Brother Hamza, they were able to see and said, you're right, we have no choice, I'm with you. And they took up arms, and as we go on and let the family know who usually listen, I have an hour show, but I was given more time to discuss this special engagement of Birth of a Nation. So bear with us, family. We're going to be with you for a minute just to be able to make sure we close out on some positive points. So, Brother Hamza, in that I explained as far as the energy I believe that he received after Nana transitioned, after the whipping, after the taking advantage of his friend's wife, after his wife being beaten, all of these things transferred into I have a no-choice attitude, and, of course, they went to gain organization. Now, as you see through the movie and what we'll discuss, they knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, possibly outmanned, but he had a strategy. And I believe his strategy is, you know, and there's some things that we'll discuss in a minute that were left out that we know happened, but because it was a green-lit movie in America, they could show him killing some of these white folks, unlike a Django movie, which to me was a satire. You could actually feel, yes, he has to do these killings systemically, and gave permission to each slave house they went to commit the murders. How was that to you, my brother, in perception to the execution, literally, of the mission to gain at least some form of retribution, if not what they thought could be freedom?
Well, it to me, Brother Wali, clearly illustrated when you apply it to, let's say, reality. Keeping in mind that we're discussing a script, and yes, there are symbolic aspects in what eventually, you know, was presented from after all of the editing was done, and we're left with a finished product, and then the finished product goes public, and you're able to see certain things and apply certain analysis to certain things. But then there's also the reality side of what actually occurred. And yes, there are some relevant aspects to the storyline that have relevance to reality. For example, I think there was a clear express purpose for the young brother who he ended up allowing to be a part of the insurrection, end up being the snitch, end up being the one who went to Massa and exposed what was taking place. And so they meaning the army and the militia and those who were representing the slave owners and such, were prepared, had already been informed. That should say something to us about affording not necessarily a young person based upon the fact that they're just simply young, but immature, unaware, lack of experience, and therefore, in many respects, fearful. How it's important to delineate that type of mentality from those who understand that this is a live or die effort. See, this is the part of again, first let me just say this is one person's observation, my own. I can only speak relative to my own observation. But one of the biggest things that I believe is a detriment to our liberation are those who are not willing to die for the cause, who are not willing to live to give their life for the end result of liberty, to be able to exercise your God-given liberty and do whatever is necessary for that to happen. I've mentioned this before, and it has relevance, I believe, today, which is simply how did these so-called founders, how did this ragtag group of folks who came over here, how did they lay this foundation for what has become what we call the United States of America today? What did they do? How did they do that? And the answer is really the last two sentences in the Declaration of Independence. They pledged all of their goods, all that they had, and the primary thing they pledged was their sacred honor. That's in the last two paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. They pledged their sacred honor. And how many of us, truthfully, how many of us are willing to sacrifice ourselves and thereby live honorably for the sake of the cause and be willing to die as a consequence for it? And I would dare say that there are not many. There are not many who are willing to give up the niceties of this life and give up the life for the sake of the cause. And so therefore, an individual's life becomes the primary aspect, and the secondary aspect becomes the honor of liberation. And so we have that concern, we have that connection to the movie existing today. The consequence of Nat's rebellion. The state executed 56 black folks who were suspected of having been involved in the uprising. But the hysteria and the fears that were created and the angers in the days after the revolt, with the white militia and mobs killed at minimum 200 folk out of anger. And so, again, what that says is that any form of aggressive or violent rebellion is going to bring about death, without a doubt. And so if you're not willing to die for liberation, for the express purpose of being able to freely exercise the liberty that you were born with, if you're not willing to die, then it's best not to participate. Because those who are willing will be sacrificed by your choice of again being a weak link in the chain, unfortunately.
That is so much truth, my brother, because Brother Dub and I were talking offline, and one of the things I saw, but I didn't really pick up on it till he mentioned it earlier, in the movie, as they were going throughout to kill these slave masters, there was no shown killing of white women or children. Now that's key, because we know if this is 1831, and there were several slave rebellions, Denmark, Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, the New York slave revolts, where you know there was some asses kicked, period. So in this movie, they showed a man being beheaded. One brother went in the house and brought the dead slave master out, and then he took off his head. And I guess that's the grossest part they allowed in the film, but they wouldn't allow any women or children shown to be killed. And according to what was written, there were some 62 white folk killed, but as you said, Brother Hamza, over 200 of us killed, which would be the impetus for several murderous rampages of us since that time up to and through the Civil War and in antebellum slavery, post-slavery, through the turn of the century, with the birth of a nation, the original one with D.W. Griffith, with the Tulsa and other Black Wall Street, Rosewood, St. Louis race riots. It was a map, and this was all prior to television. They were having telegrams with each other, the European, white folks, on how to kill us, how not to allow us to think another Nat Turner, Denmark, Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, race riot, wherever. They had to come to us in numbers. So I think it's pivotal as you watch this to probably look at blocks of time to see how vicious and ornery and afraid of us they are, because they know one-on-one. And I've always asked people this: what history do you have? And there's probably some in some lore where one white slave master, one-on-one, without a gun, challenged a brother straight up, strung him up, killed him, and that was it, with his bare hands. I am not saying that no one white man can beat no black man just in a fight. I'm saying because of the amount of rage that we had to hold in and let fester, that they know that the evil that they put on us and the retribution that will be put on them would be tenfold. And this is why I believe that the Panthers, if you fast forward 100 years after the so-called Civil War, that they said, we're going to take up arms and there will be hell for you to pay if we are attacked, brutalized, murdered, without justification. We will fight back. So they saw several Nat Turners, and instead of the rope, and as they hung them at the end of the movie, and we can get into that before we close later, I'm looking at the fact the rope was replaced by the gun. So when they kicked Fred Hampton's door in, just in analogous comparison to the movie, they said, we're not going to allow, as they did in COINTELPRO's literature, a black messiah to rise up. And because Nat Turner was a black messiah, was a leader, was well-read, knew what they did, knew how they lived, they could not allow another one like him to live. So I think that, in my own mind, helped me shape to see this guy's been so afraid of us. Even the revolts that took place on the slave ships, they knew what was going on, and they talked amongst themselves and said, we cannot control them by ourselves. We're going to have to shoot them. Dum-dum bullets, which was created because of the cocaine that they gave us on the docks to make us work harder. They said it made us sex-crazed Negroes. That's what they used to title it. So the dum-dum bullet was created to slow us down. I'm only mentioning all these things, Brother Dub, as I go to you. I just think it's pivotal as we're talking about how in preparation, even in a losing battle, and as Brother Hamza said, if you're not willing to risk death, why participate? Exactly right. Not many of us in organization are going to know that this may cost our life, but many have fought for them in their wars. And as you see, as the movie was coming to its end, the young boy went from fighting with us to fighting for them in their Civil War. I think that was very poignant because they showed his face change, and he went right into uniform when he became of age as an older young man to fight for them. And many of our brothers have been through the wars, plural, fighting for them, but would not dare on the home front fight for us if it's necessary. And that's the organizational part that I think I took from the movie that would cost people to be trepid about losing their own life. But at what cost is your life worth living if you're not willing to die? What say you, Brother Dub?
Well, good brother, that point, like I said, that still exists today. and the character, the young boy's character was Jasper, but Jasper and who was played by Kai Norris, and Isaiah, who was played by Roger Smith, and we know Roger Smith from I know him more so from the movie Malcolm X, where they was sitting at a table and debating about who's in charge, and Malcolm puts a gun to his nose and keep firing off at him, blinks, but nothing happens. So that's who Isaiah is, played by Roger Smith. But you're talking about the character Jasper and the character Isaiah, again, the house Negro. They're basically the same person. One is just a child, and one is an adult. Jasper, though he stood amongst the men when Nat allowed him to be among that cipher, his mind and his spirit was that of a child, a boy. Many characters like we know like that are today. They may be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old in a man's body, but they have the mind of a child. They have the behavior of a child. They get locked in to age 0 through 30 at most. So again, the difference between what we call a male and what we call a man. The guy, Isaiah, again, the character of Isaiah, represents the go along to get along Negro. He's heavily present in this society. He's symbolic of those today that say, well, Malcolm X was a great man. Martin Luther King was a great man. Muhammad Ali, his acts and all that, a great man, but fail or reject the action that they took and applying it to today's society. The revolutionary acts, the mind of going against the grain, the mind of my spirit doesn't rest right with this, what's going on, with these policies, with these rules, or with this change. My spirit and my energy doesn't rest right. My soul doesn't rest right. It's not comfortable with it. So rather than going against it, whether it's speaking out on it, we go along and get along and hoping that voting changes things. When you're simply just voting for the same person that you're complaining about, the same ideology that you're complaining about. So that male, the boyish mind, the childlike spirit, the childlike behavior exists in many of our men today, body as a man. What made Nat successful for the short period, for the time period that he was successful, were his I call them his two best friends. That was the character of Hark, and that was the guy who was married to Gabrielle Union in the movie, and the character of Will, who was the guy that he was one of the ones that got his teeth knocked out, and he was the one that decapitated the master, his former master. But Hark, simply his name Hark just simply means to listen. He was Nat's attentive ear. And Will was, his silent tongue. Will didn't speak a lot. You didn't hear a lot from Will, again, because he also had his teeth knocked out. So he was the brother, like I said, decapitated the master, his former master, and he represented Nat's strong will. So he had a silent tongue, an attentive ear, and a watchful eye. Nat was that watchful eye, again, because he was a virtuous man. So he was able to ascend from lower, upper, visible to invisible, dream state to, reality. So we have a lot of, like I said, boyish characters, but we have very few Harks, Wills, and Nats. Even like I said, even at your job, not your job particularly, but our job as the masses, that we go up, get up every morning 9 to 5, spend all these hours. Many of us are afraid to go against the grain, afraid to go against politics because we're afraid to lose that paycheck. We're afraid of the uncertainty. One of the things that I learned over my years is if you want to be successful, if you want to grow, if you want to, put your spirit into shock, into growth, simply do this. Do something that scares the hell out of you every day. Do something that scares the hell out of you every day, and you'll grow. You will experience the spirit and the energy that you may not have been able to tap into. It, to me, is that simple. Is that simple as the fly you kept seeing flying in the movie, and as the butterfly that you saw in there, because both of those were symbolic totems as well. And we may get to that a little bit later, but depending on how much time we got. But again, do something that scares the hell out of you every day. And that will tell you who you are who your allies are and who are the house Negroes.
That's a very poignant point, brother, because I think most people, and in psychology, they call it the death instinct. You know, people who jump off of buildings, paragliders, bungee jumping, even though it was a cultural thing prior to white boys getting it. People who smoke cigarettes, people who play Russian roulette. Anything that's a thrill seeker, riding a roller coaster, knowing that this thing, if it gets off a track, you're dead. So a lot of people find that amusing, against thinking. Your muse is to think. That's where music comes from. So when you amuse, you tell people, just go here and do everything. You're not thinking. You're not thinking about the carnival that you're trying to get away from the everyday, so you want to laugh and play games. But again, as you said, brother, if a person takes his spirit and challenges it, you know, and then somebody may say, was he saying go on the job and just go off on the boss and quit? No, be prepared if they do what they do. It could be a layoff. It could be a Black Monday like it was on Wall Street. It could be 2008 when the housing market crashed and people lost a lot of their funds that they had tied up in stocks and real estate or whatever. And you have to prepare for how do you survive without this money, without this means of exchange. Our people, even if they had jobs, they wasn't worried about losing their jobs. They was like, how am I going to get home? There were sundown towns. They have a book out, matter of fact, called Sundown Towns. They had signs across the South that would say, if when the sun go down and you out, you better pray, nigga. Because they knew that they were having sport with us. So some people who should know in a cipher with their ancestor or some relative who's within family lineage of somebody who lived in the 30s, 40s, and 50s pre-so-called civil rights, and we know there aren't civil rights, they're human rights. Brother Hamza speaks to that in detail about sovereignty. A lot of people who are too afraid to be willing to die, to rise again like the phoenix, to be willing to go into business for themselves, to get away from the hamster wheel, the 9 to 5, the not being able to speak up. We've spoken, the three of us who live in Georgia, several times about how the South here has become metrosexual, softening up of our black men. So men who have a deep voice, like we do, men who are assertive, men who will stand up, who will be willing to die, but first organize ourselves to be able to tell other men to be able to prepare, to be able to fight back. So that threat becomes where our own people will go tell massa on what you may think is a very, very lower level, but it's really a higher level because it's done electronically. With the advent of computer and social media, some people are too unwise enough, really close to stupid, not knowing that you can't put everything on Facebook. You can't twit everything. You can't text everything. You can't speak to certain people who will do like the character in the movie Go Back and Tell. So that, as the impetus for the birth of a nation, really says to me, as I said in opening up the show, that the birth of a nation is the nation within ourselves, which is when a lot of people even refer to, and I did it when I talked to somebody, I said, when you hear such as the Nation of Islam, and people go, well, you know, that's not the orthodox, true Islam, the way the Muslims. I said, no, really, he's really talking about the nation. Islam is the religion and the backdrop to get you to clean up and rise up and become a better man than you are, living off his scraps. So the business part of it and cleaning up the neighborhood within self first is a way to think about doing this. So I'm using these points and tenets, Brother Hamza, just to bring it to a head of what the movie did for me in my mind and in my eyes, because when they finally caught him, and if you remember, they had said this. They said when he was talking to his wife from behind the sheets, she said, they're just killing black people everywhere because they can't find you. He had, and this is the cinematography part of it, he had not been caught. But for the sake of his people not being killed anymore, looking for him, he turned himself in to a vicious beating when they finally got him until his eventual hanging. Now, one of the things that I find key here, and I'd like you to speak to that, Brother Hamza, before he died, they had asked him, did he have any words? I would always wonder how, in whether any movie or any reality, when they go, you got any final words? Were they thinking you were going to beg, or do they want a confession out of you about why you did what you did? I believe when he said, I'm ready, he had accepted his fate. He had already made a connection with the transitioning because of what you said earlier about Nana. He had known that this has to happen. There's no way I'm going to live after this, but no more of my people can die. And they spared his wife, which they really could have beat again to hope he would come looking for her. How that ties into how anybody else saw it, because there was a hush in my theater, because I saw a pre-screening of it last month. There was a hush in the theater when they got ready to hang him, and I was looking around because I scanned the audience. There were some people who were cringing knowing they were going to hang him because they were like, oh, God, they got to kill him. And it's like, if you know the story of Nat Turner, his hanging probably was a lot worse than he's showing you on this film. They probably mutilated him beyond belief. So don't believe he just got hung and stood from a rope. He did not show his mutilation either, because I understand, based on my research, there were certain body parts of his that was saved for people to realize this is what we do to niggas like this. And I just wanted to see how your interpretation of that was, Hamza, because I think the build-up was to leave you with a message that this is something, albeit in the film, what are you going to do? Because even though you're not dead or you're being chased, you're probably hanging by a thread as well.
Yes. Very quickly, for those who also want an additional account, there's a book called The Confessions of Nat Turner. I think it's important for those who have been stirred by the storyline of the movie, also acquire whatever source materials that they can acquire that will give you additional factual insight into Nat Turner and his rebellion. So the name of the book is The Confessions of Nat Turner, and it was written by William Styron, S-T-Y-R-O-N, Styron. And in the plot summary, he says something which, to some extent, counters his partner, Will, but it also lays out a correlation between what would take place today if a similar circumstance arose. How would we respond as a collective if that occurred? I want to share what it simply says here. It says, with several loyal slaves with him, behind him, Nat finally launches his rebellion in late August of 1831. This is a time when most wealthy whites are away on vacation, which would make it easier for the slaves to seize weapons and attack the nearby town of Jerusalem, no less. From the very beginning, however, Nat's rebellion goes all wrong. His recruits get drunk and waste precious time plundering and raping white women. A crazed, axe-wielding, sex-obsessed slave named Will begins ridiculing Nat's leadership and attempting to seize control of the tiny slave army. And Nat himself, unexpectedly, sickened by the sight of blood and the screams of his white victims, begins to doubt both his own mission and God's plan for his life. So I wanted to just kind of share that because if you've been around, and both of you have, and many of our listeners have, if a similar circumstance arose and a charismatic leader emerged from the people, and the people again raised him up, because that's how leadership is established. People who try to be leaders concern me. The people will select who they want to lead them. But we have so many psychological maladies associated with ourselves that have developed over years of servitude and submission that we would end up destroying our own rebellion. I must say it. I must say it as I see it. As it mentioned, you have folks getting drunk, raping white women, doing all type of things under the guise that they're now free, and lose sight and focus of what the real intent was and is. Simply liberation. Simply liberation. And outside of that, any other behaviors, in most cases, will be contrary to the mission. And we'll lose sight over the objective. And unfortunately, my assessment of where we are today as a community with respect to exercising the same type of revolt behavior, we're not ready. We're not ready.
I like how you put that, brother. Killer Mike, who's a well-known speaker, who talked about that. He had asked many people in an audience, and he was on a panel discussion. He had said, similar to what you're saying, not ready. He had asked, who grows their own food? How many people here have access to their water? Have you built anything? He basically went around the room and said, you're not ready. I remember when there were villages of us helping each other. You see, back in the day, Brother Hamza, and you being a few years my elder, and me a few years, Brother Dub's elder, we remember when the sense of community, it takes a village to raise a child, that was true. Not only in disciplining you, but also making sure you had something to eat, making sure they looked out for you, making sure that, hey, he ain't the boy you want to take nothing from and steal. I remember in the Bronx, and just a minor correction, Brother Hamza, you said all three of us in Georgia, not from here. I was born in Georgia, raised in New York, back in Georgia. So when I tell people that and they go, man, you got New York all over you, I'm like, yes, that's my spirit, you hear. But where I actually was born, if you want to say physically born, was in Grady Hospital. I only say that because people are shocked when they hear that. I'll go, yeah, I left when I was 5, so of course everything I did educationally through the streets and knowing this is from the Bronx. But I say this because during the time of gangbanging in New York, there were certain gang members, when they came through the streets of my neighborhood on Wales and Concord Avenue, when I was still living that part of the Bronx, in the South Bronx, off 147th Street, right around the corner from 155. I remember this gang called the Bachelors, which were black and Hispanic gang members. They were going to a rumble, and they were outnumbered. They were going to rumble against the Spades, which everybody knew at the time was the biggest gang in the Bronx. So it was told to some of the younger fellas who joined the Bachelors for what they perceived was protection, which to me was akin to bravado. They told the gang members, do not bother Tony. Do not bother Isaiah. Leave Ricky alone. This was the elders in the neighborhood who said, you can't get all of a sudden more recruits to fight the spades because you're going to lose. And some of the men who talked to the bachelors were veterans. One of them, my first sensei, George White. I'm bringing that up because they knew that the energy of these 17 to 22 to 25-year-olds who were going to prepare for battle, it was not worth it because even though there was one or two zip guns, somebody may have had a 38. It wasn't the level of firepower it is today, but just the sheer number to go against the spades, which was probably 200 deep for the Rumble, and the bachelors probably had 60 deep. I'm saying this because I witnessed it. I'm saying it because a friend of mine who was in the spades, Rakim, who I talk about all the time, who eventually was murdered in 1984, I'm saying this because the village, the neighborhood stood together. Even at times of peril, they were able to tell the gang leaders there's certain things you don't want to do. We may not could stop you from wanting to rumble, but these young men are not joining you because they're with us. And that goes back to what you said, Brother Hamza, who's preparing to die. When I saw grown men and women stand in the gap for the teenagers who were preparing to go for battle to surely lose, it gave me a sense of pride, additionally to what I already knew. So I'm saying this because I think now as we've grown into this computer, social media age, the dumbing down of our sense of family has become so perverse that talking about organization on a show like this, using the birth of a nation as a backdrop, only leads to hopefully further discussions of where we are deficient in having an actual sit-down to go back to roots that we have in ciphers to be able to explain why it is necessary to prepare before you attack. It's like Sun Tzu or Shaka Zulu. Any true warrior knows you have to know the terrain to be able to be prepared to win. And you and I, Brother Dub, have talked several times, especially when we was at the martial arts seminar back on April 30th, which I thank you again for allowing me to hang with you as we went there with the master teachers. It was a great invite where you and I both learned something, but even you being from Alabama, yes, family, I did say that, he's out of Alabama, but I know you saw family pockets that would be able to be akin to what maybe would be a old school way of thinking, maybe to take the new age way of behaviors to another level, because you definitely, like I do, I have an old soul. I'm 58 chronologically, but I have an older soul. And you have an older soul, my brother, and I think that's what's helping us to survive this type of lunacy when we talk about things like this, but organization is at the base of it. And I think more brothers and sisters who rise up to the level, maybe even using a movie as a turning point to make some decisions in their own life of where they're at.
Yeah, good brother. Like I said, to pick up where you and Brother Hamza left off, and actually where I left off too, when I talk about you do something every day that scares the hell out of you to grow or get to your purpose. And part of that is, well, it is displayed exoterically in the movie, and that is when, Nat found his spirit of destiny, or spirit of destiny. Did you catch that, you the listener? He found his spirit of destiny externally, but he had already found it internally in order to get the external spirit that he needed. So that's what fueled his purpose. I mean, that spirit of destiny. But also when you talk about, let's say, revolutionizing or strategizing or moving forward with, let's say, a plan that doesn't include being a Democrat, Republican, Green Party, whatever, it's simply, remember, Martin had people question him in his house. Martin had traitors in his house. Malcolm had people that questioned him in his house. He had traitors in his house. Well, so basically what I'm saying, even someone like a Muhammad Ali had the same thing, is when you have destiny and purpose that you have to get done, you will not always agree on how it should be done, but you move forward with it to get it done. And that's what all of those men that I've mentioned That's what, including in this character in this movie of the birth of a nation, is the same thing. That's what Nat Turner set out to do, and he did it the best that he could. Again, from what we see from a cinematography standpoint, you're not always going to agree. Same thing what we talk about in the Metaphysics of the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where you have Caesar and Koba. Neither one of them were wrong. They were simply had differences of ideology, which simply means they were disagreeable, but neither were wrong. So it's the same thing. You have someone that may question you. Again, look at the Kobe Shaq. We take it to sports. They didn't get along. They questioned one another almost each and every time, but the more they disagreed, the more championships they won. So sometimes conflict is valuable. It's just as much needed as it is to be agreeable. Because, again, when you have that challenge, when you have that, again, I don't like using this term, particularly from the conscious community, being held accountable, you know you have to be on your game. You know you have to be on your P's and Q's. And, again, Martin questioned, was he leading his people into a burning building? Malcolm questioned himself. So, again, conflict, and as again, using Kobe Bryant as an example, that's one of his rules of success. Embrace conflict. Don't run from it, to a degree. But, again, that spirit of destiny is what you have to embrace internally, esoterically. So again, are we ready today as to be a revolution and strategize and do this and do that? No. Of course not. We're too separate. We got all these different divisions within divisions. More so even than the so-called conscious community. More so divisions in conscious community than into, let's say, a religious community or a church community. Got many different divisions. So no, we're not. But again, don't run from the movement. Don't run from your destiny or your purpose, if you know what that is. Because, again, a lot of times I see people getting on other people's agenda, and they get misled, and they get, railroaded, per se, and get led into the wrong thing, whether maybe get in jail or what have you. But, again, you got to know what your purpose is to know if you're on that right path. But, again, brother, it's always a pleasure speaking with you guys. It's always a pleasure breaking down things from a metaphysical standpoint. What you, the listener, you, the audience, what can you take from this? What can you use from this? When you watch the movie now or again, what can you use? What can you take from that movie and use? Not everything, but something in there you can take from. Whether it's accurate, 100% accurate or not. Whether the Confessions of Nat Turner is 100% accurate or not. It's something you can take from it and use within your strategy, use within your movement.
Brother, that's very well said, and I agree with you wholeheartedly about finding your purpose where you are. And I think a lot of the times, and I think 90% of the shows we speak about here is about the knowledge of self. And I think one of the things I've been practicing over the last year is your strongest walk will be one that you make alone. There are times you have to ascend to your greatness by yourself first, to make sure you are positive that you shut off your negativity, the things that have been an albatross around your neck, things that you've done, whether it's being with white women, whether it's religion, whether it's eating bad foods, drinking, drugging, lying to your own people, not being attentive to your family, your community, not paying attention to when you are needed and you're available, only to sneak out the back door because you have another agenda in mind, no matter what it is. So I think during that time when you're escaping from the false reality you live in, that will only help you become better to realize that the people that you need to link up with, iron sharpens iron, you'll be able to get stronger. That's how they get knives sharp in the kitchen. You've seen them use those tools to sharpen knives. It's with iron. It cuts rubber. So if you're rubber or plastic, you're going to get cut through. You're not going to sharpen anybody. And as we, wrap up what we've done with the birth of a nation, the original one with D.W. Griffith, also called The Klansman, and the Nate Parker film, Birth of a Nation, which I encourage many of you to see, I would hope I would recommend that many of you have circles, just like we've done with Hidden Colors. And those who haven't seen the Hidden Colors series 1 through 4, I suggest you see those too. It's about gaining some knowledge of who we are, who we've been, and who we're supposed to be. And I would think that tonight's conversation with our brothers would be one to allow you to dig deep in yourself and maybe ascend to another level to teach others. Brother Hamza, I know you got some closing thoughts on this subject, and it was a pleasure not only to have you back on the air with me, my big brother, Brother Dub Duce, back on the air with me. I feel a sense of pride knowing that my brothers who have stayed strong in what we do individually together and separately with others allows us to at least continue towards making it better, not only on the air, but in the communities as well. So I thank you all. But I'd like to get some closing thoughts from you as well, brother, on how this has made you at least seek greater knowledge, not only from the movie, but using it as a backdrop to teach others.
Well, first, let me thank you, Brother Wali, for inviting me on board, and again for the steadfastness that you bring to the airways that you have for the past 10, 11 years. And I know that I'm better because of my relationship with you and Dub, and I thank both of you all for staying the course. And when I say stay the course, meaning stay the course of consciousness raising. One of the things we always mention at the beginning of our show is study from the cradle to the grave to show thyself approved. And that's what it requires. It was a very simple directive, very few words, but loaded in meaning. Study from the cradle to the grave. In closing, I had a brief discussion with a student today, and I asked her what was she studying in school. She said, well, she's in college, her freshman year. She says, I'm studying filmmaking. I said, really? Well, great. Well, stay on course, stay disciplined, continue to do what you're doing. I'm certain you'll be successful. She says, but I'm having some second thoughts of whether or not I ought to change my major from filmmaking to journalism, because that would enhance my capability of being able to write. And I said, well, that's true. You can write your scripts, and no one can tell your story better than you. In spite of the fact you may retain someone's services to write for you, there are nuances in writings that are inherent within the person who's doing the writing. And no one can tell that story better than the person who is, again, telling the story. And it's the same thing with respect to destiny, which Dub mentioned earlier, which is so critical to this discussion. I believe, I know, and I'm standing on that knowing, that all of us have within us, and this is what I told her. My response to that is simply go within. That all your answers, all that you want to know about your life and your future are within you for you to find and then for you to actualize. It's within you. It's already there. It was placed within you before you got here. So I would say the same thing, that the birth of the nation is symbolically the fact that the nation is within you. A nation is no better than those who are nationals of that nation. Otherwise, you have no nation. So it ends up boiling down to multiple individuals finding within themselves their destiny. And along the way, you're going to find correlations between individuals that will be the fodder for collective growth and collective expansion. You will find similarities. There's an old saying in Islam that there are many roads to Mecca. There are many roads to paradise. And sometime along those roads, you will run into people who are on the same road, who have a common interest, a common objective, a common goal. And then that gives you the foundation from which you can build from. So seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, number one, to show thyself approved. Go within and ask for guidance to find that road to Mecca that you should be on. And then once you find it, once that seeking comes to your realization, then go to it. Go to it with all you got. Again, I want to thank you, Brother Wali, Brother Dub. Thank you as well. Very, very poignant and very, very thought-provoking comments by both of you. I appreciate it. I look forward to it again. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, brother, before I let you go, you got anything you want to plug that's coming up that the family needs to hear about? Anything you're doing on the social circuit or on radio that they need to be aware of? And I would be remiss if I did not say peace and blessings to your queen, Sister Tahira. Thank you for all you do in assisting this good brother for staying abreast of what we do at Harambe. Anything you want to plug real quick, my brother?
Well, again, every first and second Friday of the month, we're on board at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Chat Room 786 is on board. My co-host is Consul Lamont Durrell Belton. Suri Juris, he will be on board with us those 2 Fridays where we discuss sovereignty and how to exercise sovereign rights or sovereign liberties. But I also want to mention this very quickly. In 2013, Pope Francis initiated what's called the motu proprio. The motu proprio simply was an edict by the Pope that essentially delineated the true status of public officials, the true status of those who are extensions of legal fictions in America, and that the church essentially started a process of which he has gone on record to say is illegal. And so the liberation that we're seeking, the rebellion that we're seeking, is happening. It's occurring. It's not overt. You can't pinpoint it. You don't know when the individual battles are going to take place, but know that the liberation that you seek is taking place as we speak. And so I simply want to say that, but every Friday, first 2 Fridays, first of the month, we're on Harambe Radio and TV, Chat Room 786. And please tune in and keep it right there on Harambe Radio and TV. Don't you dare touch that mouse, man.
There you go, brother. Brother Dub, anything you want? You got next week a good sister coming on Metaphysical Monday Part 2. Please announce that sister's name for the airways.
All right, good brother. Hey, I'm here. Next Monday, Sister Yaninga will be on. She will be discussing spiritual wellness or holistic wellness. But in closing, I would simply like to say to everyone listening, whether live or in playback, it's simply, are you, the black person, you, the white person, you, the Moor, you, the religious, the African, the whatever you call yourself, do you know your destiny? Do you know your purpose? If you don't, to tap into it, simply calm your mind. Because your self-control is your strength. Your right thought, that's your mastery. Your calmness, that's your power. As the sword of the Lord bounds down on our enemies, our ancestors and our children rejoice. Thank you, Harambe.
Family, on behalf of my good brother Hamza Sid Catlett Bey of Chatroom 786 and our producer supreme, Brother Dub Duce the Poet, this is me, Brother Wali. As we sign off for tonight, I would hope that the energy that you felt and the call to order and the call to action will be met. We have to practice love, family, but do know we are at war. So until we talk again next week, also on behalf of the Harambe Radio and Television Network, under the guidance and leadership of our good brother Delani Amon, we'll talk to you soon. It is one love, and always stay within the power.
Harambe, Harambe, Harambe.
Working
together
for
progress.
Feel the oneness of Harambe.
Keep it right there. Keep it right there.
Keep it right there.
Harambe, Harambe, Harambe.
Working
together
for
progress.
Feel the oneness of Harambe.
Keep it right there. Keep it right there.
Keep it right there.
This is Delani Amon thanking you for listening to Harambe Radio. Harambe, Harambe, Harambe.
Working together for progress.
Feel the oneness of Harambe.
Keep it right there.
Keep it right there.
Keep it right there.